Nice Radio's Callaloo presents Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. Just Another Look is heard only on Nice Radio, first aired on Saturdays at 6 p.m. with repeat broadcasts on Sundays at 9 p.m. Catch us on the World Wide Web, www.niceradio.info. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube. I am, of course, Keith Joseph. Today, friends, is Saturday. It is the 9th day of November 2024. Welcome to another edition of your favorite program, Just Another Look. You know, dear friends, we always anxious to talk about things that are bad. We tend to be eager to pull down others. You know, there are some people in the media who says scandals sell. Bad news sell. Anything controversial sells. And since news constitute a business, the idea of a business is to make profit. So it's not surprising that the media, regardless of where in the world, once there is something that looks scandalous, it is likely to get top billing, more so than something that is uplifting and educational. More often than not, that is the reality. And you know, across the world, people have come to accept that. So everything else plays second fiddle to scandals, to things that are demeaning of others, to things that are showing the dark side of what happens in a society. Very often it's difficult to find a balance, because on the one hand, what is good for business may not necessarily be good for the society. So the business concerns are always the priority. And I say that to say because if there's a shooting anywhere even remotely close to shops, are we talking redemption shops just out on the outskirts of Kingstown, then that's big news. So that generally, once information comes to hand that some sort of conflict or shooting or whatever that is negative occurs in shops, it is to be expected. It makes big news. But you know, when other things happen in shops, very little is actually said. Some years ago, an initiative was taken to start a chat group where people originally from shops, or people who lived in shops and are now living abroad, and people who are associated with others from shops, can communicate with each other and talk about shops, redemption shops, how it came to be, what it was like in the old days, where were the rivers, the pools, or whatever else. How did people survive in those days? And that was because there was a recognition that the community is much more than about violence. And that the media in St. Vincent and the Grenadines do not always look for the other side of the community. Well, recently, we had the public speaking competition. It took place on Tuesday of this week. And so, Just Another Look wants to use this forum to highlight another aspect of Redemption Shops: education performance. And one would have expected that this would have been big news. Not necessarily in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Perhaps the print media, but not necessarily the electronic media. There's so much other things that we could talk about. There's so many other things that we can take and make news. Why take a story about somebody from Shops doing well educationally? You see, one of the things about business is that that's what they're about. Making money. Not necessarily committed to upliftment. And owners of the media have their own ideas about how the people they employ in the media should perform in terms of what stories they carry, how they carry the story, etc., etc. It must have their imprimatur, their print on it. So on Tuesday of this week, a young man, Raj Bulls, yes, resident of Redemption Shops, a student of the Dr. J.P. Eustace Memorial Secondary School located in Edinburgh, won the Lions Club South public speaking competition for secondary schools. Yes, that's a reality. Many may not have noticed, many may not have heard, and some may not have seen. Because in the electronic media, there were so many other things happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that you didn't need to put that as a headline. Of course not. Of course not. He's from Shops. Who want to hear good things about Shops? But it's good news. And in a normal society concerned about its own upliftment, this ought to be big news. That a young man from an area almost always readily associated with conflict of one sort or another emerges as the champion in the National Public Speaking Competition ought to have been highlighted as a major feature, deserving of a major feature for the young man, for his family, for his school, for his community. But you see, in the media, we don't necessarily think that we have to be uplifting. And it's the reason why the society, perhaps, continues to be the way it is. It is easier to pull down than to uplift. For sure, when there's something demeaning, debasing, it should be covered. But also give pride of place to things that are uplifting, because it's a contribution to the society. The media is not just to carry news of what they think is important. It is also to play a role to the development of the society. Otherwise, you ought not to exist. But interestingly, this is the second straight year that somebody from Redemption Shops has won the public speaking competition. Second straight year. Because last year, Christian Joseph, also of Redemption Shops, won the public speaking competition. He came from the St. Vincent Grammar School. You see, the second consecutive such achievement by students from Redemption Shop ought to be something that we hold aloft. For the people of Redemption Shops, it must mean something of which they could be proud. We know all too readily how people are capable of saying, what good, nothing good could come from that place. Nothing good could come from that place. This is the reason such and such happens, etc., etc. But very often in a society, we help make, through the media, we help make things that way. Because instead of doing all that one can to help build, it is easier for us to condemn. It's one of the points that we make constantly with the Prime Minister of this country. You gave a commitment on the night of the election victory in 2001 that you'll put aside labor now and the selfish partisan politics to create a new Vincentian society under the mantra together now. It never happened. And to be quite honest, there's never been any effort to achieve that. So it is as if he thrives on doing the opposite of what he committed himself to. It often comes across that way. So this is an opportunity to commend the people of Shops and to be truly proud that on Tuesday evening you were able to look at yet another student from Shops showing command of his communication skills. Yet another young boy. At a time when people believe that boys are not living up to expectations academically. At a time when girls are consistently outperforming boys at every level in our education system. To find in 2 consecutive years, children from the same environment, often calumniated in this society, have been able to rise to the level of communication excellence, supported by their parents, supported by their teachers, their educational institution that helps in their formation. We must commend these things. And so we believe that it's just a little look. We want to take time out to thank the Bulls family for the guidance that they have provided for Raj to allow him to achieve that milestone, to become part of this country's academic history. These are things that we must do. And the people of Redemption Shops ought to hold their heads high walking the streets of St. Vincent and say, hey, see what we are capable of? Don't write us off as a community that you could only say bad things about. We want to say here just another, the production of 2 winners in the public speaking competition in consecutive years may well do much to force or nudge the Vincentian public, inclusive of the media, to resist the temptation to suggest that the community of Redemption Shops is not as committed to educational development as any other part of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Education success of the children of the community of Redemption Shops must speak volumes about the inhabitants and must serve to bolster its image at home and abroad. You see, sometimes we find the media and people generally all too eager to promote the negatives associated with the community. Negatives that they help enhance and embellish. That they help stigmatize. And they can't find voices or pens when good things are achieved by the same community. Are we or are we not committed to national development? Just Another Look is saying we need to change this attitude. We need to have a different approach to our society. Condemn when you need to, but by all means commend when you need to as well. We must allow ourselves to remove the prejudices that blind us to the good in each of us and in our communities. How many times must we forgive others? Over and over and over again. You see, Just Another Look takes the opportunity to extend sincere congratulations to Raj Bulls, to his parents and his teachers. But we also take time to say congratulations are in order for the principal and the staff of the J.P. Eustace Memorial, Siobhan Harry and her staff, for their commitment to excellence, for hard work, for engagement. Because leadership matters. Leadership matters. The determination and the drive to facilitate success matters in our education institutions. At a time when so many people are joining the profession, not because they have a commitment to the vocation of teaching, but because they need a job and they need it in a hurry. You see, Raj Bulls' victory is a most fitting reward to the collective effort of Harry and her staff at the J.P. Eustace Memorial. For their collective effort as an institution deserving of the most sincere accolades. We hope that Raj Bulls' success could serve as an incentive and a source of motivation to the children, students, parents, the entire community of Redemption Shops to strive after academic excellence, but also excellence in all aspects of life in Vincentian society. It's not easy to remove stigmas, but if you commit to it, if you hold fast to the examples that emerge, then together, genuinely together, not politically, not political pantomime, genuine togetherness would facilitate progress and unity and solidarity. It could also serve to change people's tunnel vision of how they see Redemption Shops. So give praise where it is due to the young man and his family, the school, the leadership of that institution. hope that everything we just said belongs to the benefit of the community of Redemption Shops. You're better than that. But we want to spend some time there first, going back to independence. In the last edition of Just Another Look, on the eve of this country's independence, we highlighted the barrenness of our independence celebrations. You know it's independence because you see people putting up bunting. And some institutions spend a lot of money on that. While others, the buntings are around so long that you can hardly make out the colors. And then people look forward to the parade. There's some people who will tell you they never missed a parade since they reached an age that would have allowed them to go through. But that's what they go for. They don't go for the speeches. Because more often the speeches do not in any way relate to independence. If you look at the history of independence speeches in this country, you recognize that under the current leadership, there appears to be a view that independence is about political mamagism. But that is a legacy of colonialism. To use what should be your national day to confuffle the minds of the electorate into believing that it is a happy birthday time and bring gifts to everybody. That is the quintessential component of our colonial legacy. Patronage. Political patronage. It deepens the electorate's view that politics is all about gimme, 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 gimme. And that's why you have to laugh when people tell you about the election, the officials, the politicians having constituency clinics. They're not doctors. What clinics are they having? What are they doing? Inviting you to come in to their offices so that you can talk political trash and you can leave feeling empowered because you have a few dollars more in your pocket. And the electorate ends up embedded in a culture of dependency. But mind you, we have to understand how we arrive at that and why it persists. Because the politicians themselves are historical relics of that same legacy. They themselves have been brought up and socialized politically into that gimme-gimme syndrome. So when you look at our society, what is it? The leader of the country is almost at every trip into some sort of gimme-gimme type of diplomacy. We call it a beggar-maid policy. But that is repeated several times over at the local level by these same political leaders. Not only with the electorate, but within their own political parties. That is embedded in the country's political culture. A despicable legacy that leads people and leaves them forever dependent on others. That is why prime ministers in this Caribbean and in other parts of the world can behave as though they are gods. Because they believe that if you have the financial disposition, that is all that the former slaves need. Yeah? So if it is possible to have the entire society become beggars, it doesn't faze the political leaders. Because it enhances their sense of power over the electorate. It enhances their sense of power within their own political parties. During the course of any given year, we can talk about the levels of social and economic degradation in the society, as they've done in the United States. And so you have people living in all sorts of decrepit areas. That's why we have not seen the 2018 Poverty Assessment Report for St. Vincent and Grenadines. They don't trust us enough to believe that we can make sense out of whatever is put forward. They have decided as a small group that is government. They don't think that that report meets their satisfaction, and therefore they don't think anybody outside of them should see it. But they tell us what's wrong with it, and they tell us they will correct it. 6 years on, they have not. So they don't trust us to make judgment calls for ourselves, because we must be dependent on them even for such judgment. That is our reality. But when election time comes, they find money to spend on making sure that they could give you rum and roti or rum and bull beef or whatever they call it. They find resources at that time. The only politician in recent Vincentian history to have denied that pattern is Annie Muses. But he told his party, I am not going to sacrifice the future development of the country by creating what they call an elections budget. Because at the end of the day, we have no money to start with. So the same people who are made dependent on the political leadership during the course of any 1 year those same people are the ones that you hope will facilitate your staying in office. So you have them dependent all the time. You know that they're poor, you know that they're indigent, and they're giving them trinkets little by little. And when election time comes and you believe that they may have seen the light of day, you say, no man, you can't see the light today unless you get a little bit more. Put something in an envelope and push it below your door. Vote for me tomorrow morning. You open the package, say, wow, I get so much of money. You don't know when you'll see that amount of money again. So you run to the poll the next day and they give you a vote. That is democracy. That is the democracy that we have been perpetuating. It's St. Vincent and the Grenadines, indeed, in the Caribbean and in much of the world. And we say, yes! You say like Sparrow, 50 million Frenchmen can't be wrong. That's how we say it. And the poor remains poor. poorer and the rich get richer. For all that you've been hearing about the United States, a recent economist in his analysis shows that since 1978, people in the lower classes, initially, for about 10 to 15 years, in each successive generation could have had a fairly good expectation that they, at age 30, would be better off financially and earning more than their parents. But over the last several decades, that has been going in the opposite direction for people in the lower classes. So that today, people at age 30 are much less likely at age 30 to find that they can be better off economically than their parents were. But at the top, at the top, the upper class, they've never dropped. They continue. So that today, children of the wealthy, age 30, continue to be significantly assured that they are better off than their parents were economically. The gap continues to widen. All the old talk. Is that not the same in Vincentian society? But rather than look and evaluate the statistics that we are fed every year after examinations, we don't follow through, and ask where those people are. No one wants to link the significantly high crime rate in the country, the significantly high murder rate in the country, that puts us to rank with Trinidad and Jamaica per 100,000 of population, to link that to the education revolution. You see, when somebody does good, we say the education revolution is working. But we're not looking at what happens to the failures. Because we name them failures, We both have we set up the system. If you're not successful in the system, that's your fault. But we make the system so that no child will be left behind. What happens is that you get left out. And your option is just where you are. 6 feet underground or 4, depending on where you go. Marcus Garvey said in 1916 in a letter to the University of Tuskegee, the Caribbean, we are sure that blacks, members of the lower class, dominate the poor houses, the mad houses, and the jail houses. How often do you see people of the middle and upper classes in those institutions? Because those other groupings have access to better law, the resources to pay better lawyers. To pay better lawyers. Yeah? So every time the government has a major case, where do they turn? What is their confidence level in local lawyers? Same government that boasts of an education revolution. So it is not surprising that independence is a political platform for the incumbent to engage in a major national chest-thumping exercise as to how well he's doing. Not how well we are doing. It's how well I am doing for you. It's not about we, it's not about us. As Mitchell said, they elect me to lead, not to follow. but it is what manner of leadership you are providing. It is not by accident that the Japanese, intellectually strong as they are, have opted for a different style of management. Because they have an understanding of the challenges that confronts a society and even an institution that is pyramidal in structure in terms of its management style. Because it says to those at the bottom, you have to wait on those at the top to decide what is going to happen. You down below, we will tell you what you need to do. You don't know anything. Japanese believe that everybody in the society has a role to play. Everybody in an institution has a role to play. But you see, we talk about democracy as a concept, not as something that happens in reality. We do not expect it to happen in reality. And that's why we get the mumbo jumbo at independence that says all you're good for is to be my followers. I have plans for you. And the level of political sycophancy is evidenced in his speech by Papa and his own celebrations earlier in the year for how many years they've been in office. I am the one with the ideas. I am the youngest head. No matter what age, I am the youngest head. In other words, he's saying to the young people who are even in his party and in his government, don't fool yourself. I and my thinking, younger than all you. So just as the electorate have to depend on him, so too the members of his party and the members of his cabinet depend on me because I have the plan. I write the plan. Other people studying it in universities, it doesn't matter that I can't tell you which university. But I am the youngest head and I write the plan. Never said we. Never said we. Independence starts with an I, but it doesn't mean you. The intention was that we would do better for ourselves as a collective. But we start off by ensuring that for every celebration, we impose and infuse everything with the legacy of our colonial masters. All we do is change the names of the people so that they're more local. We change nomenclatures, but it's the same old khaki pants. Same old khaki pants. So that we have a belief that is not independence if we don't have a military parade. God help us if we ever got an invasion. Military parade. What's the value of that to us at independence? What does that exude or tell any young child about independence? What is it? You bring children to stand up in the sun, those who cannot find place to sit, and bellow after them about the nice things that you have done for them. And they try to figure out what exactly is he talking about. We in the sun here, He gets us as a captive audience to tell us all that he's doing by himself, for himself, not for us. You didn't ask us what we want. He didn't ask us for an input. He decided this is what was good for us. This is what was good for us. Not understanding the challenges of contemporary society, where if you're not up to date with what is on the net and to which your children are exposed, you are not going to be understanding where their education has taken them. Because many parents have abandoned, the same way that they've abandoned government to those who hold the reins of power, they've abandoned their children to the internet. The baby start to cry, here, look this cell phone, play with it, play with it. And often you're not even sure what the child is looking at. Just as long as the child keeps still and quiet because you want to go about your business as normal. Parenting is one of the most challenging features of contemporary society. A child's education today is more challenging than it has ever been. And parents are happy that the children are always on the net because they believing they're having access to valuable information for their educational development. They are. But it's which direction they're going with that education. What are they looking at? How are they being influenced? Increasingly, in advanced industrial nations, which we always seem to mimic, they're having all sorts of new types of neuroses, of mental disorders, of illnesses, because their children have been influenced by what they read on the net. Truth. Is not necessarily all that you read. But truth is influenced by that. So you could do like some people and lie every moment, every time you speak. And now you get an understanding of the validity of the Goebbels thesis. If you tell a man a lie often enough, not only will the listener believe it, but the person who is telling it will not be able to distinguish it from truth. You see that all around you, particularly among politicians. So we talk about an observance of independence, not a celebration. There's nothing that they actually celebrate. There's nothing about people development. There is nothing about people engagement. There is nothing uplifting about the people at our independence celebrations. It is all about I. And you notice when that speech finished, the celebrations finished. So people have been socialized into getting up early enough on independence. Well, this time they put it in the night to make sure you know it's a fair. They put the celebrations in the evening so you know for sure it is a fair. Right? And then you use the period of independence. They gave us the cockamamie show of turning the sun for an acute hospital. But the one that exists as your premier hospital that you have been touting for years could do with a few coats of paint. They certainly need equipment and they certainly need medication. But your solution to the problems facing our healthcare delivery system today is to build a new hospital. Build a new hospital. So don't deal with a thoroughgoing diagnostic of what the problem is with our healthcare delivery system. Close your eyes to that and build a new one. The new one will automatically change people's minds, because that is the political intent, apparently, to change your mind about the healthcare delivery system. Because once it's new, everybody think, wow, that's it, everything going to be kosher. Like we build an airport transfer to the sea and the salt, and we want to know why it is we have so many planes overnighting, because of the salt and the impact that it will have consistently on the aircraft. Ask people who keep aircraft there about the cost of maintenance of those aircraft, because they are under special conditions. The airport is broadside to the wind. But if you raise those kinds of arguments, people will tell you that so you didn't want us to have an international airport. That is not the point. The point is, do you do something because it is convenient to you politically so you could get ahead? Or do you do something that is long-term, long-lasting, that will endure and not be so easily disposed of? You're not telling everybody about the maintenance challenges that you have at the Argyle International Airport. But if you raise concerns about it, it is transferred politically into melee. They didn't want the airport in the first place. That's why they're finding everything wrong with it. But that attitude is one that comes from the colonizer. That's where we learned it. And we have kept it as part and parcel of our social reality. Do not engage in critical thinking, because it will be interpreted as though you're criticizing the system. And he who leads the system is already boasting of how he fashioned it, individually, independently, but unwilling, it would seem, to acknowledge that all he has done is put a coat of paint on colonialism. All the criticism that he leveled at the whole approach to independence in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, he now appears to epitomize. He now appears to be a reflection and a relic of that colonial past that we're supposed to be getting rid of. He is an almost ideal representation of what colonialism stood for. But it is being done in an era of independence. So the independence and the progress that we claim to have made since independence appears contingent on the leadership of the country telling us where he has taken us and where he will be taking us. It is not that we have any real input in the shaping of that plan. That is colonialism. All we have done is made some cosmetic changes. And you see, as has become the norm, our observance with independence on the 45th anniversary was the same humdrum display, the same political pantomime that is essentially designed to allow the head of government to once more play Santa Claus a few months before Christmas. Trinkets here and there, sweets here and there, palliatives here and there. A sort of reminder that elections are coming. And as we've seen in the United States, if you have enough money to be able to give away some so that those who have been schooled and socialized into the gimme syndrome can feel at least a little bit satisfied, that have something to ease the tension, even if it is for a little while, that deserves to give him your vote. Learn the lessons. Learn the lessons. People are fearful. People are fearful of development. People are very fearful. So all of the trinkets and promises that you get at independence, which essentially you will find for sure in the next manifesto that the ULP put out. Designed to remind you elections are around the corner. I want you to continue to support me because I'm going to be giving you more of this, at least in the run-up to election. So put me back in office. And you see, the speech left no one in doubt that I am the one who is doing it. At the graduation ceremony for the community college students, if you revisit the speech, you'll realize how much he cannot help himself. Because he seems to have a problem saying we, even when the we is the government. So you remind the students, particularly those who get scholarships, bursaries, etc. I told you last year that I will do so and so if you do so and so. And sometimes you wonder where Ralph will find the money, but Ralph finds the money. And I will find more if you all continue to excel, blah, 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 blah. It's all about I. See, that is the point, you know. It is not designed. We're talking about Trump want to be king and this and that. We have a king right here. He's happy that his minions dub him 5-star general. So it has become part and parcel of who he is as a political leader of the country. Please tell the students, Ralph find it. Ralph will always find the money. He's not saying my government will. I am the one finding the money. So nobody else in that cabinet seems to be doing anything with regard to bringing money into this country. Only Ralph. Does that seem strange to you? Of course not. Because you've been schooled through colonialism to expect that he who leads will be the one doing that. And be careful, he, not a she, he who leads. Because for all the talk about wanting to empower women, of all the talk of the success of our girls and women in the education system and their levels of achievement, check and see how many women he has promoted within the party to the leadership level. Check and see. How many has he elevated to the point where they believe that they are key critical decision makers? How many? Miguel was no pushover. She made it very clear what were her demands. Ready, Batiste? At one point seen as a major force within the political party, marginalized. Look around. In 23 years in office, how many women have been promoted through the electoral process by the Unity Labour Party, commensurate with their advancement in education in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? You praise them. You sing their praises. Oh, how well our women are doing in our education system. You're not acknowledging that they're doing better than the boys and the men. And that is borne out in where they are in the political process, where they are in leadership in this country. So it appears as though you have a certain position as to where you think women ought to be. Put them in their place. At the same time, while clearly having an interest in being seen as perhaps the most popular prime minister in the history of Caribbean politics, Mia Mottley has come from way behind and has been ushered into that position because of a different approach. She may end up with the same objective that you want, but with a different approach. You see, there is a sense in which Caribbean political leaders are anxious to show their respective electorates that they have a right to lead. And that right does not necessarily acknowledge the fact that even our legislators are supposed to have members of the opposition. In Parliament, you're not there just to oppose, because the legislative business is serious for the development of a country. But if every time the opposition sides with you on something, you say you didn't have a choice. It's so good you didn't have a choice. And when they oppose, they say you're opposing for opposing sake. Because everything you bring is deserving of tacit approval. And so, you're playing both sides. But for the opposition, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. We have to have an understanding of what independence really means. What are our teachers telling our children about independence? Apart from scratching your head to try to explain why we have military parades and why we have people standing up in the hot sun and parading in the hot sun. What substantive are we giving our children in respect of understanding what independence is supposed to mean. What is the reason, for example, why we do not have our own independent awards or Vincentian awards? Why does a so-called progressive politician on the one hand try to convince everybody that he is progressive, but not progressive enough to insist that we should have our own awards, our own criteria for how people are? Is it because it is more convenient to retain the legacy of colonialism by sending it to His Majesty or Her Majesty, whoever is on the throne at any point in time, and say these are the recommendations of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Is that where we are? The obvious straws in the wind in respect of understanding what independence is supposed to be as opposed to what it is clear. Very clear. In this day and age, for a quote-unquote progressive prime minister in the Caribbean, given the Caribbean sordid political history, to be putting pen to paper to send under his hand or the hand of his government recommendations to the colonial people for the dispensation of those colonial awards, then we have an understanding of how backward we are. And you wonder sometimes if it is deliberate. And you wonder, how do people sit down and rally around that kind of behavior and be comfortable? How do you stand shoulder to shoulder with people who are fighting for justice and a sense of independence, knowing that your own behavior at the political level exposes the inconsistencies, the contradictions in your politicking? How do we do that? The old days, people used to say, "But I wonder if you sleep in the night." But clearly, it doesn't seem to be a problem with that. You see, while Gonzalez at Independence appears only too eager to take credit for the good that is done, when things go awry, he often comes across as not having been involved. Remember the young child, the boy? The mother said she was going by the lottery, she was going here, she was going there, just to get some financial assistance. People in the around the country were trying to help her get some funds to go probably to Trinidad or someplace to find out what was wrong with her son. That she couldn't even get the diagnosis to be able to send to tell them. And then when the child died and there was public outcry, who came forth? Mighty explainer. And if you remember what he was saying, it may be that they checked for him. Or maybe he wasn't in office, or maybe he was involved in something else. So he's the only person that could have authorized that. Remember, that's the first time we really officially knew that one of the good causes of lottery, which we didn't know about before officially, was helping people with health problems. And it came across as though, well, you all should have known. Yes, we help people with health. But that was all because the child died. Right? So he had to find an explanation, and he came forth because he believes that once he provides an explanation, it's done. But he seemed to have gotten involved in the thing with his son and Nugi Farrell and made some statement, but that isn't done. The stigma of that still pervades and impacts his son. see, Papa, it's not everything you say that will be taken on board by everybody as gospel, no matter how often you quote scripture. But people must pick sense from nonsense. We haven't heard any explanation from him as yet with regard to the lady who came from England and says she always defended St. Vincent and the Grenadines health system until, of course, the experience with her sister that left the sister dead recently. She now has to reassess. Was she really listening to what other Vincentians were saying about our healthcare delivery system? Sitting in England, coming home from time to time, did she ever really get a sense of what Vincentians have to go through on a daily basis until she experienced it with the passing of her sister? She put it, Eyewitness News had a long set of quotations from what she was saying. Reality set in. Now she has an understanding of what Vincentians go through. So now, you could tell her how many new acute hospitals you want to build. They ain't gonna change the price of eggs because of the experience that she had, which other Vincentians had been experiencing over time, but for which they have had no redress. So we're not confronting the issue of our healthcare delivery system. We're building a new hospital. Infrastructure again. We're building a new port. Infrastructure again. We're building a new parliament. Infrastructure again. Yeah? In the meantime, Girls High School and Thomas Saunders out in the Hudson on the tarmac, because they're exposed to the heat coming off of that asphalt every day, consistently, Monday to Friday, staff and students, and they're going to be there for years. No real work has been done. No work has started at the Thomas Saunders Secondary School. But who cares? Right on the other side, we're building the hospital. So the students get an opportunity to see the hospital come out of the ground. That must be more important than putting them back in their original institutions. Isn't it? Isn't that why we're doing it? To let them see the progress that we are making? So that every day they pass by and they see brick by brick an institution being built. And we hope that they don't go into the understanding of what is happening to the society in which they live. You know, whenever circumstances with the like those with the 9-year-old child died, whenever such circumstances occur, one often gets the impression income. And one wonders if that is the kind of mantra he wants to, the kind of bubble he wants to live in, or wants to be seen as living in. The poor fellow appears too full of himself to be able to do any better. In another society, he may well have associated himself with divinity, or perhaps he is, the way in which he frequently quotes scripture. St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been pathetically under the thumb of a political leader who appears to believe in himself that none of those who comprise his cabinet is even allowed to dream of being his equal. Indeed, Gonzalez's politics since March 2001 seems to suggest that this Vincentian society of ours may have a difficult time surviving in any meaningful way if he is not the one leading it. Just go back and read again what he said about the indebtedness of this country to Taiwan, and what would happen if somebody else is running the country, some other party is running the country. How are they going to get out of this debt? He's not telling us how we are getting out of it under him. And that is why one has to look so closely at what has transpired with the monies borrowed for the construction of the acute hospital. Go back and read carefully the process that has been followed. Carefully, what has not been followed. And how we have ensured an entanglement, a continuing entanglement with Taiwan in a way that has implications for successive governments over time. And the way he keeps going and borrowing from Taiwan, it looks like ad infinitum. And for him to declare that publicly may well be seen as having blatant disregard for people of this country. One wonders whether Gonzalez knows or understands that his political mode of operation suggests ever more clearly with each passing day that he appears more and more like something of a benevolent dictator. I am making more available to you. I'm putting more monies here for the poor relief. I'm putting more of this here. I'm putting more of that there. Bear with me, but I'm getting everything done because Ralph knows where to find the money. Isn't that how the country is being run? Which minister, other than Comrade, can speak so easily and readily about funding sources for the government of this country? Which? All they do is come and pump a set on your radio and television in front of this forum and that forum, suggesting what we are putting in place, and perhaps have to wait until he tells them how the money goes. You see, the average Vincentian citizen must be growing tired of hearing daily news items that begin with Ralph and end with Ralph. The only challenge to this reality is the frequency with which Taiwan is mentioned in our daily newscasts. So if you listen to any newscast, when you're not hearing Ralph, you're sure to hear Taiwan. That is an almost daily diet in our media. Ivan O'Neill was right. Maybe we've become a surrogate of Taiwan. And maybe we should really be St. Vincent and the Grenadines of the Republic of Taiwan. The only, the only challenge to his being on almost every newscast is Taiwan being on almost every newscast. So it is almost a surprise when a news item engages another member of cabinet who is not his son. Almost like an official imposition from daddy. But that is where we are, dear friends. We have celebrated or observed another anniversary of independence. What has it done for us? Other than to prepare us for what is likely to come in the manifesto for the next general election sometime next year. His superstitious behavior may allow him to choose December again because he believes there's something religious about that and his fortunes. Just like some people suggest he believes in the number 7, but he can have more 7s if he wants. But this is the society that we live in today. We spent time looking at the US elections, not with a view to understanding what are the implications of who gets elected. We look at it from the vantage point of, that's the biggest country in the world, we look at it. One or two people may engage in some sort of analysis as to why this happened and why that happened. Neither here nor there really at the end of the day. But we should be concerned. If we are truly independent, we should be concerned. But as a nation, are we? Are we concerned? We have so many people living in the diaspora. Some have done very well for themselves. Some are scared because they're still illegal in the people's country. So what does it hold for us? What should be our interest in the outcome of the US elections? What is the status of our families who are now resident there, who have been working there for a while, and who are victims, by and large, of racism on an almost daily basis? These are things that should concern us. But our politicians rush to our members in the diaspora when they need votes, when they need to raise some funds. They don't really see them as part of Vincentian society impacting what happens here because we say they're living over there. But when you look at the annual statistics, economic statistics, and see what contribution remunerations from abroad make to the national economic cake, then we have an understanding of what they mean to our society. So very often we want their money and we want their vote, but we don't want them to interfere in anything else. We resist the temptation and we calumniate them for expressing their views because they may not necessarily be in sync with those who control our society. But we have to have an understanding that they have Vincentians. And we can't always continue the trend of gimme gimme, which many people do because that's part of our colonial legacy. Right? Gimme gimme. And not want them to speak about the society to which they are contributing financially every month. We can do better as a society. And every time elections come around, people believe it's an opportunity to do better. Will that happen? It's anybody's guess. But we have to have an understanding, dear friends, that independence must mean something for us as a people. Why is it that we are so divided as a nation? Why is it that over the last 23 years, while we are boasting of doing relatively well economically, we have not been able to bring our peoples together? Why is it that even our religious organizations have found it well nigh impossible to make even one small iota movement towards bringing St. Vincent and the Grenadines together? Why is it? So we are as divided today as we have ever been. We want to point the finger at the US society for its division. They have that problem. That's their problem. But we have a similar problem here. That one side or one grouping in the society is feeding off the fat of the hog, and the rest have to eat the bread that the devil needs. That is what St. Vincent and the Grenadines has become. That is what we are today. A classical example of a colonial relic. Seemingly incapable of moving genuinely to what independence is intended to offer. The time has come for us to stop making a mockery of ourselves. If If we do believe that there's been any significant change in the education system, call it what you will, education revolution or what, then we deserve to be a better society. We're supposed to have more ideas contending for the development of our nation. And that should not be contingent as to whether or not you wear a particular party color. But we could do much better. And that's the reason we were saying, even within our communities, our successes, the successes of our children, are supposed to be a reflection of our communities. And so let us start by embracing the successes that we make minimally in our respective areas, in our little communities, and use that as a major platform upon which to put building blocks of a cohesive decent society together. That is what we ought to be doing. Not waiting on Papa to give handouts. Not waiting until election time for them to remember that you exist. Instead of that you subsist. And then the package they put below your door is to help that subsistence until next time. Enough said. You'll be listening to another edition of Nice Radio's Callaloo presentation, Just Another Look. Just Another Look is an innovative, exciting, albeit decidedly provocative, and yes, certainly controversial socio-political analysis of issues of a local, regional, and international nature. You hear it on Nice Radio, but you also now get it on Facebook and YouTube. I am, of course,